born and what year you moved to Zephyrhills, or to this area.
My name is Edward Holt, born in 1953 in Georgia. We moved to Day City in 55. I moved to Lumberton, which is sort of Zephyrhills, in about 59.
Tell me, where were you born?
I was born in a real small town in Georgia called Newton. It had one stop sign, and that was all.
Okay, and when did you come to Zephyrhills?
Now, we moved from Georgia to Dade City when I was 3. We moved from Dade City to Lumberton when I was about 7, in 2nd grade.
Okay. Did your dad work for the railroad? What brought your family to this area?
My mother, my grandmother met my grandfather in Dade City. And they got married. She had my mother. My mother went back, grandfather and grandmother divorced. So my mother went back to Georgia with her grandmother, with her mother.
Okay.
And then after she and my father divorced, we came to Dade City to stay with her father. And that's how I came to Dade City.
Okay, so you said that in the early years you went to school in Dade City at Moore Academy.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about Miss Bessie, your teacher.
Her name was Bessie Bearfield. That's all I remember about her name. She seemed huge. She was well known in school, well known everywhere. There was a little small school there. They had a gym type building across the street. And the gym, I remember, had walls but no top. That was kind of distinctive. And she made an impression on all the kids.
What was that? How did she introduce herself to you? That was interesting.
Okay, yes, she said, "My name is Big Bad Bessie Bearfield, and I will baptize your back with blisters." And you remember that? You didn't cross her at all, never at all.
So she had discipline in that class.
Yes, yes.
And this was a segregated school.
Yes, all schools were segregated at that time.
Okay, and this is like the late 50s.
Yes, late 50s.
About them. Okay, you had talked a little bit with me about the railroad and the situation with the section cars. Tell me a little bit about that.
Many of the blacks that came here through with the railroad company, and they didn't have any housing for blacks. The railroad ran at that time through Zephyrhills, and they had certain cars, railroad cars, that were parked, and blacks stayed in those. Then later on down the line, they built some small houses near where Village Inn is now, and they stayed there.
Okay, and there was a park there, and they had what was else there?
There was a wishing well there, cab stand there. I think Zephyrhills had the water faucet there, because at that time Zephyrhills water would give away free water. You bring your own container and get free water there.
So we've always been known for our water then.
Yes,
back in
yes.
the day. That's where the whole thing started.
City Pure Water started.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, nobody thought it would be worthwhile to buy water, because you're living in Zephyrhills. Why buy water from Zephyrhills when you live in Zephyrhills? So.
Right. So in 5th grade, then you went to, in 3rd grade, you went to Moore Elementary.
Yes, that's where Moore Mickens is now. At one time, there were 2 separate schools. Moore Elementary, the principal was Mr. Goodwin. Then you had Mickens High School, and Mickens was OK Mickens. I remember the name because it's kind of distinctive, OK Mickens. They were 2 separate buildings. And after you finished 5th grade, you moved on. After you finished 6th grade, you moved to the high school then. Okay. Except that I came to Zephyrhills in 7th grade as opposed to going to Mickens High School.
Okay. And you said that Zephyrhills at that time, the high school was like 7th to 12th grade.
Yes, you had an elementary school to the side there. You had high school 7th through 12th.
And you were one of the first groups that integrated Zephyrhills High School?
I think there were 13 of us. Mm-hmm. And I was one of the first groups there. I think 66, 65, somewhere in there.
All right, and that's when you said initially integration at that time was voluntary?
Yes, voluntary. But the first 5 years was voluntary. And the last year, I guess, beginning of the school year in 1970, mandatory. You go to the nearest school. Because at one point, a bus would pick us up here and take us to Dade City to school.
Right. So until you were in high school, it was mandatory segregation those days. And
then also, in high school, people here had to walk from school, because you had to be more than 2 miles away to get picked up by the bus. Because everybody here walked to school every day. All the way up there.
Okay. Tell me what you did after high school.
After high school, went to University of South Florida, majored in engineering, During that time, you had to draft. I had a low draft number. And my brother convinced me to go into the Army, volunteer to go in the Army as opposed to being drafted. So I volunteered to go into the Army, went in, stayed 22 years, and came back to here.
Okay. When did you think about applying to the Zephyrhills Police Department for a position?
After I had been in the Army about 3 years, I was considering getting out. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I went to apply. I got an application from the City Hall up here, which was where, I guess City Hall is still there now, different make there. And I went to apply for as a police officer. And I remember the police chief wouldn't take my application. And I was thinking, I'm not a dumb guy. 3 years in military, and I was kind of surprised by that.
So they just flat out said...
He told me he wouldn't take it.
Okay.
It wasn't like it was took it and put it off to the side. That he flat out told me he wouldn't take it.
So then you decided your best option was
to stay in the service.
Right.
So I stayed the rest of my time there.
Okay. What was it like growing up in Zephyrhills? What are some of your memories as a child?
First of all, I was poor and didn't realize I was poor. I was raised in Lumberton more than here. I didn't start associating with a lot of people here until I was a teenager, and then boys meeting girls and so forth. Things was, you never mix with whites here. It was never a thing there. Now there's a few people that I knew from school we would never meet. Like you talk about Ken Young. We played football together. After football season was over with, never had any contact. Or Rick Moore, he's my class, same thing. Never had any contact after that. There was a problem we had, well, I thought later on about it. I did very well in school. And you had a counselor there. I was planning on going to college. Very good grades. And she was trying to encourage me to be a farmer. And that just bothered me. And I was in Beta Club, 3.5 GPA, so forth, so on. And she wanted me to take all the agricultural classes, and I just resisted that. And she discouraged me from taking the college preparatory classes. And I don't remember the lady's name, but she's a younger lady.
But you defied that and you went to USF anyway.
Yes, I did. I had a scholarship to USF, believe it or not.
Right, and then you finished later. After the Army, you did
after I got the Army, I came back to work at the prison here, and I used my GI Bill benefits and went back and got my bachelor's and started working on a master's.
So after you retired from the Army, you moved back home.
Yes.
And then you went to the Zephyrhills Correctional Institute as a...
corrections officer.
Okay. And what was that institution like when you were growing up? It wasn't a prison.
When I was growing up, there was only about 100 inmates out there, and it was a work release center, I think it was, because the prisoners worked throughout the county doing various jobs, and they didn't have a fence around it either at that point, so it was a very lax atmosphere. Because I know we had one of the prisoners came to our class and talked to us about the arrangement for them working and not being paid and so forth.
Now, were the county jails, did they have prison gangs or gangs?
At the prison or the county jail? Because I worked at the county jail also.
Either one. Did they have the chain gangs, I guess, back then?
No.
Or not here?
I don't think so. I don't think we had chain gangs here.
Ed, you talked a little bit earlier about the different pockets of black communities in the area. Can you tell me a little bit about that? That was kind of interesting, like in Richland and different places.
Okay. One of the places they had, there was a guy here, I think his name was Vine Hill. He had a sawmill, and he had a pocket of blacks at the sawmill down there. I'm not sure what that road is, where the 301 and 39 split. There's a road there. There used to be a bar there. Down that road, there was a sawmill there. So
Tucker Road.
Maybe Tucker. You got to get some motorcycle people down there now. Okay, you had a pocket there. You had over here. This was known as cruising quarters here. This area here. You had blacks here. You had some blacks up around the train station up there, or cars there. You had a little small community there. You had a community down the road here, maybe a quarter mile down the railroad track on the left. I'm trying to think of the name of the street down there. It used to be a junkyard down there. You had a group of blacks there. You had blacks in Lumberton, and you had blacks near where Rigby's Auto Parts is. And that's about it, I think.
Okay. How many people do you think were in the whole area? back when you were growing up?
First of all, everybody pretty much knew everybody. Everybody black knew everybody else black, and the kids, and the mother, father, so forth. Some guess you had maybe 200, maybe 200.
Tell me about your church life. I'm sure your mom was involved in the church.
Yeah, she was involved in church in Day City. That's where I grew up at, and we would go there. St. Paul rather. I'm getting confused. St. Paul, right on 7th Street, near where the probation office is, right across the street from that. And that's where we would go every Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Sunday at noontime, and Sunday evening. 3 times a day, 3 times a week, 3 times a day on Sundays. And my mother stayed active in the church for all of her life.
And what kind of unity does the church bring to the community?
At one point, it was the center of everything here. The church was the center of all the activities, and almost everything was revolved around the church. Various groups, sports, Boy Scouts. Well, we had a Boy Scout troop here at one point. Everything just revolved around the church and the members of the church.
Now, the Boy Scout troop, was that based in the church? So
yes, in Lumberton, church in Lumberton.
Okay, so that was segregated also
yes.
from the time being. Okay.
I'm not sure if you heard a guy named John Mathis.
Yes.
He was our scout leader.
Okay.
And he was afraid of cats too, but that's a different thing.
He was what?
Afraid of cats.
Oh, was he?
He was definitely afraid of cats. He taught us a lot of stuff there. Him and a guy by the name of Dan Thomas, they were our scout leaders.
Okay. And then so your children grew up around the world, Germany, or where did your children grow up?
Both my kids were born in this area here. Both were born in, one born in Day City, one born in Lakeland. We went, the first time they went anywhere, they went to North Carolina when they were young. Then we went to Chicago area when they were still young. Because I distinctly remember my son coming home from school and telling me there's another black kid in school besides me. And that was outside of Chicago. We went also to Italy. What else? That's about all my family went with.
In Germany? Or
I went to Germany by myself.
Oh, okay.
Because it was 2 years as opposed to, particularly family is 3 years, go by yourself is only 2.
Oh, okay.
And then I was in a place where there was only 4 American families, 2 of which had German wives. The school was 200 miles away, so kids had to go out, go to school for all week, and they come back on the weekends. And like I said, there was only 2 other American wives, and I think if I bring my wife over here young, 25 years old, no TV now. All the TV were in German, all the radio stations in German, everything German, all the stores German. So I said, no. So I left my family here.
Now tell me, you met your wife here.
Yes, went to school together.
Okay. And she's Frankie's cousin.
Yes, she's Frankie's first cousin.
Okay.
We were dated in high school and got married 2 years later.
Okay. So, and then you had the 2 children.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Long life. So, well, that's good. What is your impression of Zephyrhills today?
It's changed. Maybe because I'm getting older and getting more mellow or whatever. During the 60s and 70s, it was a different atmosphere. Everything was more confrontational at that time. But now it's not so much. So I enjoy Zephyrhills now. At that time, it was just 2 separate communities when I was growing up. 2 completely different communities. And you didn't understand each other, and you lived separate lives. And if I went to school with someone, after school, we would never interact after school, only at school.
So you've seen that was during the times of the change in the civil rights movement.
Yeah, during the civil rights movement, yes.
And then you've seen it kind of evolve into now it's just kind of one community.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You were on a good point about your friend that you played football with.
Yes, Rick Moore and King Young.
Yeah, and then how that just kind of, once that was over, it just kind of...
Yeah, Rick Moore was a pretty good friend of mine. And after school, he went his way, I went my way. I think he went into service.
He went to USF, and then he
went to
quit school.
And went to service. I think he went to service, yeah.
I think he went to work for DOT.
Okay.
I don't think he went to the service. But so in that time, you know, you got it got to a point where you could mix and cooperate in school.
Yeah, but not outside.
But the society was still separate. And
Now, there's
different.
one guy I knew fairly well. I'm not sure if you know him, the Chaunceys.
Yes.
You had two. You had the Chaunceys and the Chanceys.
Right.
They're two separate. They're related, but they call it these
Pronounced.
named differently. Now, there's a guy named Keith. We stay pretty good friends. We're still pretty good friends now.
Okay.
He was on the. Most of these guys revolve around being on the football team together. Keith, Ken Young, Rick Moore.
So sports was a building
Yes,
block
mhm.
for change,
Yes.
really. Then
Now, at that time, we had supposedly the first winning team in something like 20 years in Zephyrhills. But you had a lot of blacks on the team, a lot of blacks. And we had a small team. I think we had 22 people came out for football, 2 quit, so we had a 20-man team, a 20-person team. So everybody played all the time. You didn't get a break. You played the full game.
Right.
Offense, defense, kickoff, return, all that.
So you were in high school in the late 60s and early 70s.
Yes, I graduated in 1971, Zephyrhills High School.
Right. So that was the height of change, really.
Yes. I think we had at that time, the largest graduating class in history. We graduated 104. And I think we had 8 blacks in that class by that time. But after that, prior to that, the schools had integrated, completely integrated. So we had more blacks there. You went to your nearest school, which was Zephyrhills for us.
So how did, I guess, to kind of follow up on that point, how did the sports, was kind of a joint community formed around the sports team?
Yeah, yes. We had a black coach, Melvin Denard he was the line coach. And you had Allwood, Bob Allwood, I think his name was. And he was the head coach. And Coach Stevens, who was a kind of tall guy, he was the backfield coach. And all of them we were good friends. We had a very close relationship at school. But after school, that was it.
Now, Cruising Field is where you played your games,
Yes.
right? You didn't have, the high school didn't have a football field.
No, we didn't. And when I went there, we didn't have a gym either. The gym that they recently tore down was built while I was in school.
Oh, okay.
And we came down here and practiced. Most time practice here. Sometimes you practice in Zephyrhills at the school there. Most time we came here and practiced. And we played all our games there. All the games there.
Now, do you remember Mr. Stewart, Ray Stewart?
Raymond B. Stewart.
Right.
Yes,
Now,
he was my principal.
He was your principal.
And his son was in my class. He played football with him.
Oh, okay. How did he handle the integration, and was he helpful to that? Or?
I don't remember much about him at all, other than who he was and he was a principal. I didn't have many interactions with him. There was a couple of teachers that I remember distinctly. You had Davis, Mr. Davis, can't think of what his name was. He was I think he eventually become principal out there.
Jim Davis.
Jim Davis, yes. And he was kind of forceful, put it that way. And I remember another guy, Mr. Kretschmar. I still remember him, because he was a math teacher, a very smart guy. I consider him racist. He didn't like the idea of blacks drinking. He had a water fountain by his classroom. He didn't want blacks drinking at the water fountain.
So,
And that's in the late 60s. Late 60s.
So it took some people longer than
Yes,
others to adapt.
Like I said, he was a real smart guy, and he had a son in school too, but he was just very different. He was one of the problems I had in a lot of my aspects in school there was I was the only black in class. I took different courses than most people did, and that put me in a different group of people. So I was extremely quiet, didn't mingle with anybody in the class. The only place I mingled was football. But I took different classes than anybody, and I was, like I said, I was the only black in the whole class.
Right. So that was an uneasy feeling
Yes.
sometimes. And kind of took a while for adjustment.
Yes.
But you said out of 104 students, there was only 8 blacks.
They graduated.
Right. So that is a much smaller number.
And see, like I said, I took different classes than most of my friends did. Most of my black friends did. So I was the only one in class.
Now, what was your first year at USF like then? Because that was, you were a large minority there,
Yes.
too.
Okay, first of all, there was a program in the late 60s called Upward Bound. That was where low-income kids that were pretty smart would be in this program, a federal funded program, would live at USF the summer, take classes that were in preparation for your next year classes. And they exposed you to the college environment. You went to all the basic colleges, the tours of all the colleges in Florida. And I started the year after my 9th grade year. So I went the summer after 9th grade year after 10th grade year, after junior year. In the senior year, you start college.
All right,
So after I graduated. When I graduated in May, I started college in June.
Okay.
So I went to school continuously all those years.
Was the acceptance at USF easier than high school, or was it?
I had pretty good grades. So I had good grades. I did very well on it. They had a test called the Florida Placement Test. Something I can't think of it. And I did really well on all my test scores. So I didn't have a problem getting any school I wanted to get into.
Now, how many blacks were at USF at that time?
Now in the summer school with Upward Bound, you probably had 300, 400 kids. Now, when I went on to college there, because I knew the college and everything, we probably had maybe 500 students on the whole campus.
Was it? Were you? Did the blacks and white students interact then, or?
I didn't stay on campus. I commuted every day.
Oh, okay.
So and that was one of my downfalls there too.
I lived on campus,
Mm-hmm.
and I was there in '71, the same year you were.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was a very separate division, I guess, of blacks and whites. And I don't think I realized at that time that they had just integrated everything. I
Right.
didn't understand how the whole thing worked. So it took me a while to realize why we were still kind of separate.
Like I said, when I was there in the summertime, that program Upward Bound was primarily black, although you did have some whites there too, and you all socialized there. But when I went on to college there, like I said, I commuted every day, so I didn't have the friendships out there that I'd had before. And all of us from Upward Bound spread out over the country, going to various schools.
Right.
And that was one of the intentions of this program, to get everybody going. It was college oriented. I would say 95% of us went to college. After high
Yeah,
school.
college prep really
Yes.
tried to get you ready.
Exposed you to a lot of reading, books. They gave away free paperbacks. Got a library full of paperbacks. Any book you wanted to get, you get it free and keep it.
Probably to make up for the separate but unequal school system you had in the county systems growing up, maybe.
Yeah, I didn't do much reading in terms of the library reading as I was growing up. I didn't start doing a lot of reading until I went to college and so forth. But I don't remember ever going to a library other than the school library.
Right.
And I'm not sure whether I couldn't or I just didn't want to. I'm not sure.
Right.
But it was different.
Maybe both.
Maybe both, yes. And see, the library was, I think where the library was. I think it's where it is now, back in those days. I didn't ever go to that library until after I got out of the Army, in fact. The first time I went there.
I guess the one question I'll ask, I posed this to Charles and Celia in a similar way, but I guess the way I'll phrase it is, I'm 26 years old, so like it's really hard for me to imagine a world where things are
So
that
distinct, so separate, yeah.
So I mean, I guess what I would ask is what do I need to know about that time? Like, as someone who wasn't even sort of alive at that time, what kind of stories or information would you tell me so that I understand what that time was like?
The main thing is that how distinct the two different races were. They rarely intermingle. Most kids my age, other than football, you never socially mix with anybody else out of the race. And that's very, very, I guess socially required because we didn't do it.
How did you think about that? I mean, it was just normal for you because
Yes,
that's
it's normal.
what you grew up in.
It's normal.
And you didn't think about...
One way or never thought about it one way. It never crossed my mind one way or the other. During the late 60s, a lot of blacks got involved in the Black Power movement and so forth. And a lot of people were really enthused about that. And we all had our national black heroes. And most people don't realize how some people were looked upon back in those days. Martin Luther King, when I was growing up, was not a great guy. You had some names I'm threw out here. Eldridge Cleaver, Muhammad Ali, can't think of the guy's name now. You had Richard Pryor, certain names of people that were influential
Right, they kind of broke barriers.
Yes.
And those were the people that garnered your
Right.
attention. And,
Like I say, like most people today think of Martin Luther King as a real influential guy. Maybe he was nationally, but we didn't think much of him at all. We
Right.
thought it was more of a sellout than anything else.
Oh, okay. So you were more interested in kind of pushing
Yes,
faster
yes.
or harder.
Because there are certain things I remember doing. I remember the City Hall. They had a Ku Klux Klan meeting there. I was a junior, senior high school, but must have been a junior in high school. Right down there by the library, you had the police station in the building, you had some jail cells there, and the big auditorium was where they had the meeting. And me and my buddies, we went there and talked to the police guy, said, we're going to go to the meeting here. And we went over to the meeting. 4 black teenagers.
How did that happen? What happened there?
Nothing, because the police were across the hallway, so we didn't have a problem. Now, many of the places most other people went to, most people went to, were all segregated. Where you have, right across from the school there, you had Ethel's Bar. Blacks didn't go inside at all. They had a bowling alley there. Blacks didn't bowl. Me and my buddies went there to bowl. I had never bowled in my life, throwing the ball everywhere, gutter balls everywhere. But that was the first time that they had anybody black inside.
Just to take advantage.
Yes,
just
yes.
to say.
But normally before we did anything like that, we tell the police we were going to go do these things.
What was your mother a little concerned about some of those activities?
No, first of all, she encouraged us to go to integrate schools. Like I say, my 7th grade year, it was optional. And my mother gave all of her kids the option of going to Zephyrhills or going to school in Day City. Some of my brothers went to Day City. Some of us went to Zephyrhills.
So what did your mother do for a living?
Okay, initially she was a maid. Then later on down the line, she was a factory worker. But she had 7 kids, and all of us pretty successful.
Okay, and she raised them herself.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because your dad didn't come down.
Right. So she's depended on her father a lot in Day City.
Your grandparents were support.
Yes.
Okay. What was your mother's name?
Mary Lee Holt. Mary Lee Walker was a maiden name.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if you know where, what's there now? The Mickens, Mickens, the principal of Day City, had a house there at the corner of Martin Luther King, and it wasn't called that then, and A Street. And my grandfather had a store right beside their house. That's where we spent a lot of our time there.
Okay. What do you think about Martin Luther King today?
At that time, I considered, like I said, I considered nonviolence not the way to go.
Right.
Today, it makes more sense now. Because I'm older, and violence would not have been a good thing, because you had so many people. Like I did a lot of reading about, let's say, W.E.B. Du Bois, one of my influential people from the past, as opposed to Booker T. Washington. They're drastically different. And that's where I saw Martin Luther King as opposed to, I can't think of the guy's name now.
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X. And by the way, I went to his hometown, by the way, too, up in Georgia.
So it's not, I mean, for everybody, sometimes we have a tendency, I think, in the majority community of lumping thinking. Minorities all think the same about different things, and that's just not the case.
Now, the older people thought Martin Luther King was the better leader, whereas younger people thought Malcolm X was. Right. And see, a lot of us, during that time, when I got into reading a lot of the more aggressive books about things, and I formed different opinions than my mother and my older people in the neighborhood.
Well, just approach on how
Yes,
you
yes.
approach, how you push for change was different ideas.
And see, many of the people that I grew up with, older people, didn't read very well at all, and they weren't exposed to a lot of things. And as I came up, I went to school out there, exposed to all these different ideas, and so I'm different than the older people did. But many older people were more subservient to society than we were at that time.
Right. Well, it was dangerous.
Yes. Now, I never had any problem with being afraid of anything, because I'm from here. Grew up in Lumberton. Been around guns all my life. I got my first gun when I was in 6th grade. So I've had guns. So I wasn't intimidated by that aspect of it at all.
Just different times.
Just different times. Like, I tell people I had a gun. My Christmas present for 6th grade was a shotgun, and people just amazed that I was.
Right.
And I never did anything negative with it, but just the idea of having one.
You probably used it to hunt for food.
Yeah,
and
yes. Did a lot of hunting. I still got it, believe it or not. Still got the same shotgun in the house.
All right.